P.O.P podcast, let's go. The P.O.P podcast, let's go. The P.O.P podcast starts now.
Welcome to the P.O.P podcast. I'm Jason Sirotin, co-founder of Brain Bites Creative, where we help elevate your marketing game. Join me and my co-host, Scott Haley, managing partner of P.O.P and senior advisor for True North Practice Transitions. And today we have a very special guest. He's a P.O.P member. He's working out of a new practice in Gilbert, Arizona, Dr. Trevor Nichols. And Trevor is here to share his expertise on the benefits of private practice owner over corporate dentistry, how private practices can compete effectively, innovate marketing and social media strategies, clinical protocols for day-to-day starts, ODB and Spark aligners. So let's dive into this exciting conversation and start with Mr. Scott Haley, because he told me before, he goes, I got to say some things about.
I can't help myself. I got to say something. So, Trevor, first of all, thanks for being part of the P.O.P Doctor Network. We're excited that you're in the group, and Trevor is a positive life force, and I don't know how to describe it, but if there was how there's like deadheads that go to the concerts. With my former role at Ormco, I was a Trevor deadhead, right? Like I've probably heard Trevor speak 20 times. We've done the factory tour at a couple times together, so we've got all that stuff dialed in. But I've always been really impressed with how genuine you are and how like your outlook on life. You bring a positive energy. So I thought you would be the perfect first P.O.P member that we would bring on the podcast, not only for our other members to get to know you, but also to be able to share some insights about your journey and what you got going on. So I don't know, that's a long-winded way, Jason, to say that I've got a Trevor Nichols man crush here. So,
So Trevor, let's jump into it. What's your journey? How did you get here? How did you make a fan out of a person like Scott?
Well, I'll kind of start just by saying that Scott is equally as magnetic. With his role with Ormco, I've gotten to know him really well. And when I found out that he was going to be involved with P.O.P, it made me want to join P.O.P even more because of who Scott is, his values, his ethics, his care for each of us. I'm really excited about that. I don't think there's anybody better for that role. But my journey's been super exciting and super fun, and I'm grateful to be here today. I started out, joining one of my heroes in orthodontics and worked for him for 6 or 7 years. And in his transition and in his life, kind of, gaining more years in practice and looking toward the end in retirement, he decided to make the decision, to move on to DSO. So he sold to corporate in 2021, and it kind of left me wondering what to do, having been an associate / small partner in his practice over a 6 or 7 year period of time, wondering what I wanted to do as far as, do I want to stay involved with that corporate organization, or do I want to branch out into private practice? And for me, the goal was always private practice. I think most of us as orthodontists, as we go through schooling and education, most of us don't join orthodontics and become an orthodontist and spend the time and money to do that, to work for a corporation. Most of us want to work for ourselves for all the reasons, right? Lifestyle, for income, for autonomy, for flexibility, lifestyle, all of that are reasons in which I wanted to become a private practice owner. And so I made the difficult decision to transition away from that corporate, and we're preparing now to open a startup, which is a difficult journey. However, I'm already really excited. I've seen some amazing benefits even leaving. And so it kind of leaves me in a unique position where I've seen the strengths and weaknesses of corporate orthodontics, and now kind of seeing the strengths and weaknesses of a private practice startup. So that's kind of my journey to get here, and really excited moving forward to open the practice and to do things the way that I've always dreamed.
So I'm an orthodontist. I've got an offer from a DSO or an OSO on my desk. You've seen both sides. Make the argument.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on stage of life as well. I can understand the argument for some orthodontists that are nearing the end and are looking to maximize the income that they might get. And that was kind of where, the doc that I was working with was at. That being said, I think that, it's important for people to understand that by joining these corporate organizations and giving away the autonomy and flexibility of your practice, it's not like you can work there for a year and leave. I mean, with most of these organizations, dental service organization, orthodontic service organizations, for you to get that maximum return on the years and years that you've spent growing your practice, you have to stay involved with that organization for a minimum of 3 to 5 years. Most of the time, it's going to be longer if you want to be involved in the private equity transitions and get the multiples for your practice. And so I think some docs they think it's going to be a short-term thing, and it's not as short-term as I think many of them believe that it is. And sometimes what can happen is, and I've seen this often with all the orthodontists that I know that have joined these organizations, is that they think it's going to be one thing and it turns out to be another. And so they do have to give up some of that autonomy and flexibility. And at the end of your career, that's really hard. If you've worked in private practice for 25 years and you're handing the reins over to somebody else, and they now have control over budgeting and hiring and firing and all the decisions of the practice, and now you're just an employee, that's a tough way to end your career in a lot of ways, in my opinion. On the other side of things, working in private practice, you maintain that autonomy. You can work through your decisions in your lifestyle. You can have in the office who you want in the office. You can make decisions regarding, who you want to provide free treatment to or who you don't want to provide treatment to. All the decisions with marketing and budgeting, as well as the type of orthodontics you want to do, even to the point where some of these OSOs are going to demand, you finishing cases sooner and you starting cases maybe earlier than you'd want to. So there are financial pressures involved. And if you want to create the kind of perfect exit transition and really protect the industry, in my opinion, I think that, private practice is really the way to go. I think it allows us to provide our patients with the best experience, with us the most fulfillment in our careers, and protect the future of orthodontics.
You seem like
Yeah.
the type. Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry, Jason. Do you mind if I piggyback off of that? I got a question because in both roles, I'm really excited at P.O.P. We have quite a few new practice owners that are in the group, which is exciting because they're also networking with some very, as you know, Trevor, very successful practice owners. So that's kind of the beautiful sauce, just so to speak, of P.O.P. But I spend a lot of time visiting with residents and associates that are at that point where it's like, hey, it's kind of like you. I want to live where I want to live. And for me to do that, there wasn't maybe necessarily an ideal practice to buy in that area. So that decision to be like, hey, I'm gonna take that leap of faith and start up a practice. The thing that's ironic, a lot of the orthos that are my age, they all did it pretty successfully 20, 25 years ago, right? So it's not like it can't be done, but it seems like this younger generation feels like this, like, I can't do that. They put it in the too hard bucket. Can you talk a little bit about, is it in the too hard bucket, or is that like a myth that might be perpetuated out there by, people that don't want people to go out there and start up private practice?
I love this question. I've thought about this a ton because I want to be an advocate for younger orthodontists who want to be private practice owners. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's just different. It's different. We have to approach it in a different way. And it may be, I think in the history of maybe some of our predecessors in orthodontics, that the goal was to get out of residency and to hopefully you have a mentor doctor that you can buy out, and then that practice becomes yours. It's a legacy practice that's passed down from generations of orthodontists. Those opportunities are tougher to find. If you're willing to move, they're certainly still available. There are a lot of doctors that still want to sell private practice, aren't interested in selling to corporate, or they may not be able to. Maybe it's a different size practice that doesn't fit the ideals of these larger corporations. So we have to just approach it in a different way. And I do think that maybe that's more startup mentality. However, I do think that things are changing. Even in the short period of time we've seen this bubble of orthodontic specialty organizations, it's happened in the past where we've seen these OSOs come and then dwindle a little bit because they run out of funding, wherever it may be, and then it spikes up again. So my thought is two things. Number one is it's not impossible, and I want to encourage all of the younger docs that want to be private practice owners. Yes, you can do it, and you should do it if that is your goal and your dream. You're going to make it happen. Just the way that you got into dental school, that way you got into orthodontic residency, that wasn't easy, but you're capable. And you need to believe in yourself to be able to make these things happen. Part of the benefit, as you mentioned, of P.O.P is there's some incredible orthodontists that have done this. They've done startups. They can teach you and they can mentor you along the way, which I think is super important. I also have a network of younger orthodontists who are in the same boat as me. And we make these decisions kind of together. We bounce things off ideas as far as looking at leases and build outs and what vendors to use and how we're going to structure our payment and our flexibility with our financing and all of the things that we can make our practices unique to stand out different than these OSOs. But we certainly can do it. It just has to be done in a different way. We have to be a little bit more open-minded, but there's tons of resources. Banks are still willing to loan us money. Yes, we have different obligations financially with our student debt and things like that. But we don't have to be stuck in the corporate wheel. We can do this. And I want to encourage all the younger docs that have that goal to go after it. Talk to me, reach out to me. I'd be happy to offer resources and my experience, but go for it.
That's awesome, Jason. And not to pick over your questions here, because I know Jason's he's itching to ask the next question. We see it on our side of the practice transition business all the time, right? So you go talk to the residents, and one of the things they'll say is, I got so much student debt, I can't afford to buy a practice. And the dirty secret out there is that this is a great business, and there's people that will give you the money to go start this, because this is a really good bet for these banks. Let's be honest here. It's a great bet for these banks.
Yeah, orthodontists don't default. And I would almost make the opposite argument that if you want to maximize your income, the only way to do that is to be a private practice owner. It's the only way. If you work corporate, you're going to get stuck at a per diem. You may get bonuses for starts, but there's no equity. There's no growth potential. It's a means to an end. It's a job. You clock in, you clock out. We know it could be more than that for us. But what I'm saying is that the only way to really maximize and to kind of eat what you kill, as a matter of speaking, is to be that private practice owner. And yes, there's some risk involved with that. But you are the one that will have the greatest reward. So if you want to pay your student loans off faster, then in my mind, it's like, all right, well then either buy a practice or start a practice as soon as you can, so you can maximize that revenue and pay your loans off as quick as possible. And yes, banks will loan you the money. That's the way to do it.
So I want to jump back just because I had a question. You seem like a guy who cares about legacy. And it used to be that people really cared about legacy. What do you think has changed? And what is it money? Is it the different technologies? Is it just culture? Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. I think that a couple of things have happened in the last decade that have pushed people, I think, a little bit more toward private practice selling to these OSOs and corporate organizations. I think, economy has been a big thing. And COVID, to be honest, I think scared a lot of docs. I mean, we had to shut down. And that's super scary, because your income goes from X and it goes to zero. And so a lot of these docs, I think, were nervous about the future of the economy and not wanting to deal with the ebbs and flows and thinking, hey, well, if I can exit now and join a corporation, then I don't have to carry that risk by myself anymore. And I can have additional tools that will help me to navigate that, as well as support behind them as far as TC training and what market trends are. And what I found is that that's not really true. They do have some tools and some ways to help, but the risk is still there. I mean, the docs that are selling still maintain a large portion of equity in these organizations, and the same risk applies, whether they're going to be in an OSO or they're going to be private practice. They just now have somebody telling them what they can and can't do. So the risk is still there, but I think the fear is what caused a lot of docs to sell. And some of them thinking, hey, if I can get the maximum for my practice at this point in time, nearing retirement. I think that could be some small argument for some docs, but for those of us that have years left in our career, again, the best way is to do it on our own. I really, really believe that, having done both.
Absolutely. Everything is risky. Getting out of bed is risky. So you got to really,
True.
choose wisely. What do you think in terms of private practices? How can they effectively compete with the corporate practices?
Such a good question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, after transitioning from a corporate to opening the private practice, and what are some ways in which I feel like I can maximize, competing with these. And we have a lot in my area. And I think there's several ways in which we can do this the most effective. And number one is just being unique. A lot of these corporates are bound by regulations. And so we can adapt to the market and be more flexible and unique on a dime. We can make decisions that can change the way we run our practice right away. We don't have to go through the hierarchy of manager to regional manager to, CEO. We can just make the decisions that we need to. We can customize our approach to patient financing. And a big way is just building our own personal brand. That's a community brand, that we're there for the community, that we are private practice, that we cater and we are flexible for our patients with their financing to make it affordable, not cheap, but affordable, and really maximizing on the branding of what we do and who we are, I think is really going to be valuable. And then on the other side of it, it's like joining groups like P.O.P. I mean, I feel really lucky that starting the practice at the same time P.O.P was kind of created is allowing me some of the financial resources that I wouldn't have had before. And it's getting deals on things that, that are very similar to these large organizations with volume discounts. We can have that as private practice docs now. And part of it is just coming together, and that's what I think the huge benefit of P.O.P is I have these resources like Dr. Horsley, who's an incredible orthodontist and clinician, but runs an amazing practice and has done for a long time. And he wants to support private practice orthodontics. And so as part of P.O.P, I have this resource with him and lots of other docs that we can mastermind this together in ways in which we can make ourselves different and unique. And I've, heard recently, even in my community, there is a negative connotation with corporate. And I think it's because, patients don't feel the genuine care. They don't have the experience that they've had before. Things do change over time. And personnel, it's really tough to get somebody a raise in these corporate organizations. So the staff isn't as happy. That trickles down to the patients, certainly. And so the way that we can do it ourselves and make these adaptations to culture and finances and make the decisions with the backing of amazing docs that have done it before puts us in a unique way to market ourselves as these great docs who are family oriented, that are community oriented, that are privately owned, and people really do want to support that. I've had recent patients that have said, hey, I don't want to go to a corporate office. I want to go to private practice. And people get that. They really do. They see the difference in the value there. So we've just got to let them know.
Hey, so a couple of things you said something that's really important. And I always tell people about, it's one of the first things I say when I talk to a doctor about joining P.O.P. I'm like, look, you're going to save some money on gloves, your clinical supplies. And usually let's be honest, that's the reason why people call us and they want to join, right? Like they want to leverage the same pricing that they would get if they were a part of a big OSO. But I always tell them, like, that's nice. I know that's why you're here, but you're going to stay here because of the network effect of the doctors in the group. Because what you guys all share amongst each other is probably the best practice management consulting you'll ever get for essentially free, right? Like if you implement some of those things that the doctors in this group are doing, it's incredibly valuable. It'll speed up the learning curve. I got a quick question, and I wanted to get your take on this, Trevor. I've always thought about this. So if you're a doctor and you sell your practice to an OSO or DSO, what does that do to your referral network? Like I would imagine that that's a big thing. Like if I'm a private practice general dentist, how do I feel about all those cases, or pediatric dentists? Do they look at it differently? And does that change? Do those referral patterns change because of this too, this dynamic?
Yes and no. I think it really depends. So, now even with the growing network of dental service organizations and a lot of the dentists that have gone to corporate, I think they refer to other OSOs that have gone to corporate. So it kind of changes and morphs into like corporate referring to corporate and private referring to private, if that makes sense. But at least in my area, there's a lot more private practice docs than there are corporate docs. And they're private for the same reasons that I want to be private. They understand the benefits. They understand the loyalty. They understand the legacy that we talked about, and they want to keep that. And they want to support, I mean, the docs that I know that I'm going out on my own, like they feel that a lot of them have done that and they want to support it. They really, really do. And so it does change the dynamic of the referral network. The private practice docs, I think, are going to group up and we're going to kind of look to support each other. And I can say from my own perspective, knowing the docs that have sold out to corporate, I'm less likely to refer to them for general care. And I'm way more likely to refer to private practice docs who I believe in that are privately run and owned and have that, advantage. So I mean, even for me, I'm like, I would rather refer to private practice doc because I know the experience patients are going to get. I know the stumbling blocks of the corporate. So it definitely will change things. Corporate may refer to corporate, but there's a lot more private practice docs that are going to continue and want to support private practice offices.
And because you're such a well-spoken guy with lots of interesting things to say, we don't have time to hit everything on our list today. And some of the most exciting things that I wanted to talk to you about were around marketing. And so just real quick, I want to hit on the fact that you have developed quite a following on Instagram. And I think that, on social media, having a discussion around the importance of communicating and being there and not being afraid to put yourself out there is a really interesting conversation that we must have because it is no longer an option. And
so true. So true.
You've got to dial in and you've got to be part of the action and you've got to be part of your community. And I want to congratulate you. This is awesome. I looked at your stuff. You've got so much cool content. You're engaging with people. Look, when we talk about at Brain Bites, we talk about something called authority. It's about an orthodontist having an authority on something and establishing a brand and a feel. You are nailing it. You are definitely top of the game here. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to schedule another cast where we can focus on this stuff and drill in, maybe bring on a couple folks to ask some questions, a doc who's never done it before, and, a marketing professional. I think that'd be a really cool thing. Would you be down with that?
I would totally be down. This is one of my passions because I feel the importance of it. And I see in our industry the fear that's associated with this marketing, social media, and the resistance and hesitancy. And I want to break down those barriers because it's not as hard as people think. And it is extremely valuable in building that brand. Like I mentioned before, I think one of the most important things that we can do as private practice doctors to survive and thrive in the future is going to be social media marketing and unique marketing that talks about our brand. And what we talk about with being our brand is what makes us different, what makes us unique. Who is Dr. Nichols? Who is he really? Let people know who I am, what my strengths are, and focus on those things. And you'll attract patients that resonate with that. But if you never do it and never put yourself out there, you're never going to reap the reward of that.
It's so critical. It is such a big part of business. I want to thank our guest today, Dr. Trevor Nichols. Make sure you go check him out. You can go to nicholsortho.com. That's NICHOLS, ortho.com. Actually, go to Instagram, follow him immediately. It's at Dr. Nichols on Instagram. I'm sure on other platforms as well. Scott Haley is the managing partner of P.O.P. If you are a doc who's on that decision line, you got to have a conversation with Scott. So go to pop-ortho.com, get on the line with him, and just hear about what the other side has to offer, because you owe it to yourself to hear both sides. On behalf of the P.O.P. Podcast, I'm Jason Sirotin. We'll see you next time.
P.O.P. Podcast.